Hi, I'm Mike Orlock, your featured reader this month. This first selection is called Living Out Loud, and I dedicate it to all Orlocks everywhere. I'm not the kind for corners, seeking the safety of shadows from which to look into the light, my voice muted, lest I be disputed for whatever words fly like birds out my mind through my mouth. I'm the one you hear sometimes braying like an ass, sometimes howling like a Ginsberg in a crowded room, my voice hollowing out a space, a place from which my intonations reverberate and boom. I come from a long line of loud talkers whose young are taught early on to announce themselves through force of lung, to fill silence with sound, monotony with cacophony, until every black hole in conversation is buzzing with white noise, spiked by eruption and detonation. You want quiet instead of a riot? Spite us, don't invite us. We Orlocks have spent generations living out loud, perfecting the art of standing out in any crowd, letting you know our minds even when they're empty as drums, banging in quick time against time until we're struck dumb. I taught high school English for 35 years, and I think this poem probably came from that experience. It's called Adventures in American Poetry. When my students needed him most, Walt Whitman was nowhere to be found. He resided for the longest time in the section on post-Civil War literature, tucked comfortably between selected poems of Emily Dickinson and 3 excerpts from the vast literary canon of Mark Twain, carefully expurgated to reflect racial sensitivities in these troubled times. But when students were asked to turn to him for an example of vernacular free verse, all they found was space empty as the American plains in those days where Whitman, shaggy as any buffalo, roamed. Perhaps he'd tired of loafing and lazing his legacy away. After all, a man in his boots, so used to wandering, had to feel impatient that a new world so alive with song had relegated him to the silence of stuffy libraries and textbooks thick as headstones. There was grass out there to be contemplated and hawks aloft to admire. Still, when I directed my students to the designated page, where together I intended to sing the body electric with them, 11th graders already juiced on cafeteria junk food, I never expected Whitman would have ditched my class, along with 2 chronic truants whom I hadn't seen in weeks, by abandoning the hallowed space that Houghton Mifflin Harcourt had reserved especially for him. "Where's Whitman?" I asked, aloud in disbelief. What does one do when an American poet goes missing? Especially one as unpredictable and iconoclastic as Walt Whitman. To be honest, my students thought it was kind of cool that some long-dead dude had booked for parts unknown in a text few of them had ever bothered to open. It became a game of Where's Waldo for the remainder of the period. Was he kicking it with the realists, chilling with the naturalists, or banging with the beats some 70 years down that long literary highway from home? In the end, it was Spacey Stacy, the daydreamer in the back of the first row, who found him, just before the dismissal bell, hiding among the contemporaries. He was sitting on a stone wall, bathed in the gold light of a late afternoon, examining an apple Robert Frost had just tossed him from the second step of a ladder. Both looked so comfortable in the other's company, we left them there to their musings, and, so as not to disturb them, quietly closed our books. This one is entitled My While's Worth. I value my while. I put a premium price on whiling away, so it makes perfect sense my while should be worth a lot to me, especially now in these autumn years of pandemic and political pestilence, when everything seems to scream by at twice the speed of a blur. Compounded daily in the present tense of exchange, I figure my while is worth at least as much as the next guy's, and twice what it was yesterday, when I spent a while whiling away while waiting for the world to take a surprising turn. Then you showed up, as expected as today, while all that whiling was wasting away. and with wiles that have nothing to do with the wile I was wiling with, you gave me something worth all the while I was waiting for. This poem is titled Blind Sides, and it begins with an inscription from a French philosopher named Maurice Blanchot. The everyday has this essential trait. It allows no hold. It is the unperceived, first in the sense that one has always looked past it. I keep looking for things in the wrong place. I search for art in museums and galleries, overlooking the salt shaker in my hand, whose utility and design are perfection defined, staring me in the face. I rummage for poetry in the pages of books, through volumes slender or thick, and anthologies that offer a smorgasbord of verse for every taste from which to pick, ignoring the poems that sneak up behind me, disguised as flowers, trees, or birds, that speak in tongues of color that blind me, in silence too pure for words. I prospect for love in grand gestures of romance, golden vistas, orchestrated music, pastel costumes, and choreographed dance, missing the miracle of minutes that play out daily like thread from a spool, stitching together two lives locked by chance, in an embrace so seamless we seem one, not two. These next few poems are inspired by my granddaughters, who really are my muses on some of the poetry that I write. This first one goes to my granddaughter Addie. It's called Goofballs. I couldn't carry a tune if it came equipped with handles, but Addie makes me want to sing nonsense songs that use her name in nonsense rhymes, that make her laugh to melodies that lurch like zombies, cobbled together from memory of songs I've heard or think I've heard, but probably haven't. Anyway, it makes no never mind to Addie. She just laughs out loud longer the more ridiculous I sound, mangling words and rhythm to end in exaggerated falsetto E's that scrape against the ceiling before crumbling into the bass rumblings so low her laugh becomes a choral tremolo, which only encourages me to sing louder, until maybe Mom or Dad or Grandma or one of Addie's big sisters warily peeks in to see what all the ruckus is about. Just Grandpa and Addie, one of them might shout. Two goofy kids doing goofy things on the kind of day that makes goofballs want to sing. This one is Cinderella Spring for Rory Michelle, my princess of every season. April wears the sun like silk, a girl in swirls of yellow folds that drape her days in lingering light as she steals minutes from the night. Like Cinderella dreaming dresses, cleaning her stepsister's messes, April too has work to do, washing winter from the world so dreams of daffodils come true. Her sisters May and June deride April for her moody swings, impatient of meanderings. They want summer, want it now, want the sun to scrape and bow. But April takes her time with things. Over fields muddy with melting snow, steps uncertain, progress slow, she pauses, clouds of skirt lifting, and gives to all a peak of spring. This is Beautiful Magic for Rosie, who is. Nature needs no wand to cast spells of beguiling green, nor a hat from which to pull rabbits by the dozens, nibbling new shoots shot from the earth like a shock of flowers from up the sleeve of my garden. April might delight in a bit of misdirection, getting me to see one thing marvelous in bright morning sun before sawing the day in half with a blast of winter cold. And May enjoys her sleight of hand too, conjuring bouquets of tulips from behind my back wherever I look. But the trick that dazzles most is the simplest, hypnotizing me, easy me, willing me, to believe once again the magic of things, seeing the world through your eyes come spring. This poem is about the times we're living in. It's called Uncertain Spring. Don't blink, peering out windows. You might miss it, that stray shaft of sunlight slicing through clouds. It lifts the green from doubt, if just for a minute, in a lawn still broodingly brown. April wants to keep seasonal distance from her winter relatives, February and March, but her days can carry only so much hope, and she's so uncertain what to do next. There's still so much to do. Outside, looking in this time of viral gloom, she sees rooms in need of airing, senses your impatience too, for more than a slice of sun, more than a breath of breeze to lift you from the doubt of these uncertain days. She coaxes a green shoot from the detritus of your window box, seduces a bird on a branch to suddenly sing. Little gifts to reassure you there's still magic in the making. Be patient. It's just spring. My dog Trip is also an inspiration for me. This particular poem is called My Age in Dog Years. I know there's a formula for it, an equation that would make it plain. I can never quite remember it, no matter how many times it's explained. Is it 7 years of theirs to every one of mine? Or does every season mark for them another year in time? In the scheme of things, it hardly matters as I contemplate how old my dog is, but my age in dog years seems much more impressive when I calculate mine and his. I would, at my current height and weight, be a Methuselah like 400 years, which means I might have known Newton or been a patron of William Shakespeare's. I could have wandered the West with Walt Whitman, or have known Emerson, Twain, and Thoreau, shadow-boxed with Ernest Hemingway, or made movies with Greta Garbo. I could have borne witness to revolutions, seen history made and revised, lived through scores of wars and tragedies, been a voice for the millions who died. Or maybe I'd still be kicking it, some 300 years down the road, marveling at a future beyond belief, providing our world won't explode. With that time, I might have learned something, done something to benefit mankind. But much like the four-legged friend at my feet, all I've done is scratch my behind. This is called Coved Copy, and I dedicate it to doubters and deniers. What if the calendar caught itself to COVID too? Came down with the jitters that jumbled its months, let May mix with March and August piggyback April, all the way through summer into spring. So there was no end to things, and things went on again and again, until again began again without knowing when to end, because there was no end to begin with, and everything was just the middle, stuck like a fault in a record groove that won't move, playing the same chord over and over. What if days no longer mattered? Sun and Sat and Mon and Fry can twos and thurs all they want, because there was no whens anymore to balance the week, no tipping point to teeter on and totter into the weekend, because there is no weekend to look forward to, just another morning following evening with an afternoon in between, of time taking its time to get there, even though there was nowhere to go and nothing left when you arrive. What if hours quit being hours and collapsed into minutes? And what if minutes hacked themselves into moments that stopped and started in syncopation with a ventilator, breathing in and out the seconds that beg for thirds and fourths, as the body unravels itself from the world and marks time, waiting while the virus attacks the lifespan of all of us, until all of us is whittled away to none, and none of us is all that is left to copy what we have become. Would COVID get your attention then? This is Thinking of Gethsemane. The orchard in back of the neighbor's house was once part of a larger concern, with acreage that spread to the west and south, since sold off, clear-cut and burned. The trees that remain still stand in rough rows, though it's years since one has been pruned. Their boughs are gnarled, and what little fruit grows is spotted with blight or bug-ruined. These were apple trees once in halcyon days, when each tree stood full with esteem. They bled the rich earth and blossomed each May in a blizzard of white thick as cream. I walk these rows now in summer's soft dusk, between trees listless and lank, and lament that trunks once thick are mere husks, decrepit, dying and rank. Such is how death is for both man and tree in this grove on a hillock of earth. We seek solace from past fecundity, permanence and temporal rebirth. If life has purpose, maybe it's found in the example of these old trees. They stand against time as the world wheels round to still flower and perfume the breeze. An exemplary life. It's what we all aspire to, each day waking to possibility fulfilled, our own to accomplish in some measure, small or large, walking steadfastly into a life we build, making moments for ourselves that others will commend as worth the work and while. Thousands of years before us and thousands more to come, among billions of lives lived already and more each morning born, some impulse implores us to strive to be the one that makes a difference for those who adore us and for multitudes of others never known. For to be exemplary is a most human desire, regardless of who we might be. It drives our dreams of what we inspire in ourselves to fully believe. We each can show the world, so vast and vague, so small and pacific. We're much more than just an inevitable stone in an empty honorific. Before I conclude, I would like to thank Chuck and Estelle Lauder for inviting me, including me in this poets community here at the UU, and for the UU itself, which provides a great venue for poets in the county. And for you, out there listening to me, hopefully this has been a painless experience, maybe even as pleasurable as an afternoon nap. This last poem is called The Hunter. There's got to be a line, he thought, if not a line, a phrase, a keystone to the poem he'd sought and flirted with for days. He felt it lighting there somewhere, an empty space between the gentle slopes that once grew hair and eyes a soft blue-green. If only he could grasp the thing that fluttered out of reach, he'd use his poet's hands to wring out every word of speech. But every time he came too near, the thing would fly away and leave him facing his worst fear. He'd nothing much to say. Thank you.